In this video, I want to take a moment and discuss some of the tools that we have for customizing our layouts. Now this is a continuation of the previous video, and so before I get going here, what I want to say is that as a developer or someone that's trying to learn FileMaker, I need to encourage you that if you're right-handed, that you train your left hand to do the keyboard shortcuts. That will make your life much easier. So I'm a right-handed person. Of course, if you're left-handed, you can flip this, but my right hand is driving my mouse or my trackpad. My left hand is on the keyboard hovering over the Command key or Control key. And so my left hand is going to hit Control L, or it's going to hit Command or Control B to jump around to do all the things that we need to do. If I want to do a find command, I hit Command or Control F to put us in find mode. We covered those videos previously. So I'm going to be in browse mode. And so when I talk about jumping to layout mode, I'm going to assume that you're now training your fingers to do this, and I'm not going to be mentioning how we do it. If you really hate using your other hand to do the keyboard controls, I guess you could always use the mouse or trackpad to press the button right there. Keep in mind the button kind of moves around a little bit if the panes are set to be visible. So we're in layout mode, and on the right side we have the inspector. Now, every release of FileMaker seems that these inspectors or these panes are being customized or upgraded. And this started back with FileMaker 12, I think, and we started seeing the inspector as a window. And really, it's fundamentally the same thing. Its difference now is that it is still attached. Now, you can actually have it visible over here, say View, and then go to Inspectors and say New Inspector. And what this does is it actually pops a new inspector with the old behavior. So this is the loose inspector window that kind of floats around. And so if you want additional inspectors, you can do this. It's kind of hard to see it, but if on a big monitor, you could have like additional inspectors visible. And of course, on the inspector itself, there are 4 different sets of tools here. This is, of course, the data tool, which is the one that I spend most of my time in. And then, of course, progressively less time going from right to left. But my UI design guy, or the people who do a lot of design work, spend a lot of time in the appearance and styles tools. So let's go ahead and cover these in the video. And first off, to say that the data tool allows you to click basically on a field, and then it's going to highlight or show you specific information regarding that object or that field. So we can see that that's the field's name there. We can put placeholder text in it. So say, for example, that you wanted to have the field here, but you didn't want to actually have the label over here. Say, for example, that we had title and first name and last name. These were all labels that we didn't want to have. Well, what you could do is click over here on title and put placeholder text here. So you could say this is the title, this is the first name, right? And here is the last name. And so what's cool about this is if you go back to browse mode, that it actually puts the text in there and you click on it and it works normal, but it has the label there. As soon as you start typing, like if I type my last name, you notice that the label goes away. So it's what they call placeholder text, or an inline label would be another way of referring to that. So that's that option right there. Additionally, we can talk about control styles. We actually have other videos later on in this section where we spend more time with it, but basically the idea of a text field. So if you have a text field, it's just a field that you type into. It doesn't matter if it's small or it's tall. That is going to be an edit box. You can have a drop-down list, a pop-up menu, a checkbox, or a radio button. All these are driven by having a value list. What is a value list? That's just a pre-canned list of possible options. So actually, if I go back here and see title, it actually has set up to be a pop-up menu. So this has already been kind of set up for us. And if you select this, then it says, hey, what value list do you want? And of course, we could say the title value list or whatever. Now, these are value lists that were set up by the person who built this file. So in a brand new file, there are no value lists. They start totally blank. So let's say, for example, we don't want to use the title, but maybe we want to do our own. That way you can see how this works. So let's pop up the list, and this is the title, and it has these values in here, but we want to be our like superhero title. So this is kind of a little bit of a stretch, and we get into this later on, but you could be a flying superhero, you could be a space superhero, you could be all sorts of things, right? And so the idea is that this is a static set of custom values. You say OK, and away that goes. So this begins to work. It's very straightforward, very simple. Once again, I keep jumping back and forth with the keyboard shortcuts. Control or Command L or Command or Control B. You can tell an object to hide under certain conditions, which is really cool right here. You can have objects that allow you to enter while in browse mode, or maybe we don't. So say the website we only allow in find mode so you can search on it. So if I go back to browse mode, notice that I can put in here, I can put stuff in here, I get the website, I click, I can't get in there. But if I go into find mode, which is Command or Control F, then of course I can click in here. So that was a setting that we had courtesy of this function right here. Normally in FileMaker, as you're navigating in browse mode between fields, you're going to use the tab key. But you could also have it use the return or enter key. And this, of course, largely depends upon the expectations of your users. So you'll need to play with that a little bit, decide what you want. Some other things in here are pretty straightforward. This has to do with localization with certain languages. Not really a problem we run into with US English too much. This is a function of FileMaker Go. And so you can actually specify the kind of keyboard that will spawn. If you click into a field, you could have a keyboard that just shows numbers, things like that. You could use system default, of course, but you could have a keyboard that shows up that's specific to like a phone number. So that's some cool things that are in there. If the field is a date format field, you can specify the way the date or the time will appear. So like if it's 10 p.m. at night, but if you like a 24-hour clock, then that's going to be 2200 hours, right? So all those kinds of things you can set up and customize in here. And so once again, these are areas that you can scroll down. If you see an arrow that's turned like that, you can turn the arrow and make it visible. So that is the data tab. If we go over to the appearance tab, this is all pretty straightforward. A couple important things to understand. I'm going to skip the theme and the style for the moment, but right here, what we're going to do is all the settings down here have everything to do with these two items right here. So when you're building a layout, typically as you build it, initially you're going to set the theme here, right? And then you'll have additional styles that'll pop up under different situations based upon the object you're clicked on. But here with the appearance tab, different objects give you different options. You're going to set that this is a pop-up menu, and you're going to specify which thing that you're going to customize. So you're going to say, let's just say the field name here. So let's say edit box. And if the edit box is in normal mode, which means that no one's clicked on it, then these are the settings that it has, right? So say the setting is red. And then if it's being hovered over on a computer, on Mac or Windows, then it would be maybe green. And if you press on it, it might be a different color. And then if it's in focus, it might be yet another color. Now this is an extremely crazy case of color mania. I'm going to go back to browse mode. So you'll see that that's the mode it's in right there. I'm going to click on this, and notice if I'm pressing down and holding the mouse down, I'm getting blue. And so that is pressed, and then if I release, it's in focus. Different objects give you different options. And so if you have a button, for example, over here, so I'm going to do the hover color as this, and then I'm going to do the pressed as this, and then as the in focus, I'm going to do that. And so back to browse mode. So what I did real quick is I set up a button to show you the behavior differences. So as you can see, notice that I can't hover over a text field, but I can press into it and bring it into focus. A button, on the other hand, you'll notice that the hover function works, the press function works. However, clicking on a button and releasing does not bring the button in focus. It's one of those little peculiarities of the FileMaker platform. Different objects that you're likely to put on a layout will have different kinds of behaviors. And so a field will give you certain options, a button will give you other certain options. And so this gives you a pretty dynamic environment to build an interface in. Pretty cool stuff. I'm going to go ahead and push along here and make a note, of course, that you can put an image into the object. You can put a gradient. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can also put line the box or put lines around an object or a field specifically. You can set the thickness of the field of the lines. How wide do you want it to be? Obviously, 8-point is really ugly. You can round the edges. You can do all sorts of cute things. The padding is useful to know about. If I click in here, notice that if I start typing, if I zoom in here a little bit, you notice that there's space in here below the text and to the left above. That is the padding. It's inside. And so if I click over here and I go to padding, you see they're all like that. If I actually set these to 0, then you see it basically going to smash itself right up to the edge. So 0 is a little on the ugly side. As you build an interface, you look at FileMaker samples or you look at FM Starting Point, you'll begin to get a feel for what good numbers are. Typically 2 or 3 are good numbers. It also depends upon the vertical spacing and other things within a field, how much vertical space this area takes and how much padding you want to do. But you can sit here and dynamically monkey with it and look at the top. It's like, I don't like that. How about 2? And click out. Oop, that's better. Now, how about a little bit more? Maybe like a 4. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So that's how you're going to work with that. Once again, down below here, you can customize your text. These are all features that if you've been using Microsoft Office for any period of time, these are all the kinds of normal things you see there in terms of positioning and things like that. Jumping over here to themes and styles. Handling themes and styles correctly will make your life easier in terms of building an interface. If you mishandle themes and styles, what you're going to find out is that A, your life is harder, and also the performance of your database will be slower across the internet. If your server is in location A, you're accessing it across the internet. If you handle themes and styles correctly, watch our videos later on. It will explain why doing this correctly will improve the performance of your FileMaker application. Really, really important. Lastly, we have a positioning one here. This has everything to do with anchoring, primarily in alignment. So this is alignment and anchoring, position also. So for example, I'm going to zoom back out to like a normal size here. Say for example, you're building a field in here and you're setting all these fields up and you drag a field on here and you're like, oh, well, I want this field to like perfectly match or whatever. And you grab this field and you bring it up here. It's a website field and you're like, it doesn't match right. It doesn't look right. Well, really what you need to do is figure out the proper size of this object here, or the top width. See, the height right here is 24. And what you can do is come down here and make sure that that's 24. So that's 24 there as well. And obviously, if I bring over the website one here, it's 48. So I could change it to 24 in here and resize it that way. It gives you precise controls. When you pop this open for the first time on your computer, it's probably going to be set to some other units. Just click on the unit itself. So click on PT, that stands for point. It becomes inches, which for me is almost useless. But if you're like a print typist or a typeface person that's doing printing, maybe that's important for you. Centimeters, obviously. Personally, I don't think in things of 0.8 centimeters. I mean, that's weird. For me, it's all about point size, and that's really kind of a computer standard. The other thing is as you build a layout and you want the objects to stretch, auto sizing is really good. You can tell something to anchor all the way left or all the way right, or if you put it in the middle, it'll stretch. So if you go to browse mode and I move this over here, if I grab and move this, you'll watch some of these objects in here will start stretching, right? I've kind of made a mess out of there, misaligned. See that? So they start stretching. And that stretching is because we set them to stretch left and right side. Make sense? There are certain limitations to how this behaves. It's really not a conversation I completely have right now, but you get kind of the idea. Also notice that you're going to need probably a bigger monitor than the video size that we're using here. We're shooting these videos at 720. And one thing about this design is that as you go in and out of browse mode, this layout is going to blow out left and right. So I go to layout mode and it's gotten a little bit large. It's like festively plump, like one of my kitties that's been overfed too much. So anyway, you get the idea. Watch out for festively plump kitties. Watch out for your layout. It will get festively plump as you go in and out of layout mode. That kind of covers this whole idea. You can play with this quite a bit. There's little things in here, but aligning objects all left and right. So you can come in here and align things as well. You can say, hey, align them all to the left, or I'll center them up, or align them to the right. Very handy tools to get your layout nice and pretty. Now, one last thing I want to mention over here is that as you work on objects in layout mode, 80% of the controls you're going to need are in these 4 sections right here. So this is the inspector pane. These 4 sections are standard and pretty much identical to what we had in the previous versions of FileMaker. That being said, because of that consistency, I can tell you that there are 2 main areas that are missing in here that really should be in here, but they're not. And that is the idea that conditional formatting and script trigger management of an object. Say, for example, that if this company is Apple, it turns green. We can do that in FileMaker. So we go up here under Format, down to Conditional Formatting. And we say, if the value, I say containing, we say Apple, and I change the text color to green because that used to be one of the Apple colors, right? We say OK. So that conditional formatting is not an option anywhere under here. So we go to Browse Mode, and if I put company in here, right, and I tab out, the text actually turns green. So conditional formatting and script triggers are not in the inspector pane, right? So the script triggers would be things like if I click in here and I click out, or I put Apple in here and then I want to trigger a script to fire automatically, those two things are actually in here under format, which is a little bit weird. I think FileMaker was trying to find a place to put set script triggers. So set script triggers are right here. It's specific to this object. Really, there should be another item here, which would be behaviors or something like that. And that would allow you to manage the behaviors of this. Maybe you'll see that in a future version of FileMaker. I have no idea, but it's one of those little inconsistencies. So in the back of your mind, know that most everything is here, but the two items that are missing are your conditional formatting and your script triggers.